Money has a way of speaking truths that people won't. That's what I learned when my phone buzzed at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, delivering an anonymous text that would shatter my world. Check your joint account. Now, I almost dismissed it as spam, but something in those words grabbed me by the throat. I'm Evie, and until that moment, I thought I had it all figured out: successful web design business, comfortable home office, and a husband who supported my independence. What a joke that turned out to be. My fingers trembled as I logged into our bank account. The numbers didn't make sense at first. They never do when your brain is trying to protect you from something awful. But there they were, 5 transfers, each for $20,000, made to an account I'd never seen before. Brandon. I called out, my voice echoing through our empty house. Of course he wasn't home. He was never home on Tuesday afternoons, always citing client meetings that suddenly seemed far too convenient. I grabbed my phone and dialed Clara. She picked up on the second ring. I need you to look up something for me at the bank, I said, not bothering with hello. Evie? What's wrong? $100,000 is what's wrong. Can you trace where it went? Jesus, Clara whispered. Give me the details. I rattled off the account numbers, dates, and amounts while pacing our kitchen. The kitchen Brandon insisted we remodel last year with my savings. The memory turned sour in my mouth. Got it, Clara said after a moment. Evie, the receiving account belongs to Martha Miller, my mother-in-law, the woman who'd spent 7 years treating me like an unwelcome houseguest in her son's life. The pieces started falling into place. All those family dinners where she'd make snide comments about my career, about how a real wife would give up working to focus on family. My phone buzzed again, Brandon this time. Hey, babe, going to be late tonight. Don't wait up. I stared at his message, remembering how he'd defended his mother every time she'd belittled me, how he'd insisted I was being too sensitive, how he'd slowly convinced me to combine our finances, because that's what married couples do. Evie, Clara's voice brought me back. What are you going to do? I walked to our bedroom and opened the closet, pushing aside Brandon's expensive suits until I found the lockbox he thought I didn't know about. Inside was everything I needed: bank statements, investment records, and a USB drive I'd never seen before. I'm going to make them pay, I said, my voice steady for the first time since that anonymous text. Every single penny. The Miller family dining room always felt like a courtroom, with Martha presiding as judge and jury from her throne at the head of the table. Tonight, the air was thick with the scent of her signature pot roast and unspoken accusations. So, Evie, Martha said, cutting into her meat with surgical precision, how's that little computer business of yours? I gripped my fork tighter, forcing a smile. Web design, Martha. And it's going well. I just landed 3 new corporate clients last month. She dabbed her lips with her napkin. Brandon tells me you're working such long hours these days. It must be difficult for him. Jessica snickered into her wine glass. Not everyone can prioritize family like I do, Mother. I glanced at Brandon, waiting for him to defend me. He stayed focused on his plate, pushing peas around like a child avoiding confrontation, the same way he'd avoided my questions about the missing money this morning. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, I've been thinking about scaling back. Maybe looking more closely at our finances. Brandon's head snapped up. Honey, we talked about this. Everything's fine. Did we? Must have missed that conversation between all your late meetings. Martha's knife scraped against her plate. Brandon works very hard to provide a good life. Some wives would be grateful. Some mothers would respect boundaries. I shot back before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's eyes widened with barely concealed delight at the drama. Brandon's face had gone pale. I need to check something in the kitchen, Martha announced, standing abruptly. Brandon followed her like a puppet on strings. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but their voices carried down the hallway, drawing me toward the kitchen door. She's getting suspicious, Brandon's voice urgent and low. We need more time. Don't be weak, Martha hissed. Everything I've done has been for you. That woman and her modern ideas about independence. She never understood our family values. The money is being put to better use than her frivolous business. Trust me, darling. Mother knows best. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart hammering. The USB drive from Brandon's lockbox suddenly felt heavy in my purse. I hadn't had time to check its contents yet, but now I knew it would tell me everything I needed to know. My phone vibrated, another text from my anonymous informant. Check the offshore accounts. Has been busy. I walked back to the dining room, where Jessica sat alone, swirling her wine with unusual intensity. Trouble in paradise? She asked, but something in her tone was different. Almost sympathetic. I studied her face, wondering if I'd just found an unexpected ally in this nest of vipers. Clara's office felt like a confessional booth, all dark wood and hushed voices. She spread the documents across her desk, each page another nail in my marriage's coffin. These aren't just transfers, she said, tapping a highlighted column. They've been systematically moving your money through shell companies. Look at the dates. It started right after you landed the Thompson account. My biggest client. The one Brandon had insisted on celebrating with a weekend trip to Martha's beach house. The same weekend he'd convinced me to sign those investment papers I barely remembered. There's more, Clara said, pulling up her computer screen. The offshore account isn't just Martha's. Jessica's name is on it too, but she's only receiving minimal payments. Like hush money. The pieces clicked together. Jessica's strange behavior at dinner, those sympathetic glances. She's trapped too, I muttered. My phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. Check the USB. Password Brandon's high school mascot. I pulled out my laptop, hands trembling as I inserted the drive. Warriors 1234. Of course he'd use something so obvious. The files loaded, revealing years of correspondence between Brandon and Martha. Jesus, Clara whispered, reading over my shoulder. They've been planning this since before your wedding. Martha's been coaching him, teaching him how to manipulate you. A knock at the door made us both jump. Tom, Clara's husband, stepped in. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. He handed me his tablet, open to a real estate listing. My breath caught. That's my design studio, I said. But I own that building. Not anymore, Tom said quietly. The sale went through this morning. Buyer's name is Miller Holdings. The room spun. That building was my dream, bought with 5 years of savings before I met Brandon. He'd insisted on being added to the deed last year, for tax purposes, he'd said. My phone rang Brandon. I answered on speaker. Honey, where are you? Mother's worried sick. Is she? My voice sounded strange, distant. Or is she counting my money? A pause. What are you talking about? The studio, Brandon. My studio. How long were you planning to wait before telling me you sold it? It's not what you think. Then explain it. Explain the offshore accounts. Explain the emails to your mother about how to handle me. Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder, more like Martha's. You should come home. We can discuss this like adults. No, I said, something hardening inside me. We'll discuss it like enemies. Which is what we've apparently been all along. I hung up as another text arrived. Martha's at your house. Destroying evidence. Hurry. Clara grabbed her keys. I'm driving. I nodded, already planning my next move. They wanted to play with money? Fine. I'd show them exactly how expensive betrayal could be. Brandon was waiting in our darkened living room when I got home, his silhouette rigid against the window. The air reeked of Martha's perfume. She'd definitely been here. You went through my private files, he said, not turning around. You sold my studio. I kept my distance, cataloging the subtle changes in the room. My laptop was missing from the desk. The filing cabinet drawer stood slightly ajar. It wasn't personal, Evie. Just business. He finally faced me, and I barely recognized him. Gone was the charming mask, replaced by something cold and calculating. Mother taught me that sometimes you have to make hard choices. Mother taught you how to be a thief. A thief. He laughed, but it sounded wrong. Everything I did was legal. You signed the papers yourself. After you drugged me at the beach house. The memory crystallized. That oddly bitter champagne. The fuzzy morning after. The stack of documents he'd rushed me through. His silence confirmed it. Where's Jessica getting her hush money from, Brandon? The same account as the studio sale. That hit home. He flinched, mask cracking. Leave her out of this. Why? Because she knows something worse? Something even Martha can't spin. You don't understand our family. His voice rose, desperate. Mother only wants what's best. For who? You? The son who's so afraid of mommy's disapproval that he'd destroy his wife's business? Or Jessica, who drinks herself to sleep every night because of whatever secret you're all hiding? Stop it. He slammed his hand against the wall. You think you're so clever, digging through our lives, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. My phone buzzed, another anonymous text. Check the garage. Third box from the left. Hurry. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, I said, moving toward the garage door. A weak man and his manipulative mother. Evie, don't. Too late. I was already pulling out the box, filled with documents spanning decades. Property deeds, insurance policies, death certificates. My hands trembled as I read the name on top. Catherine Miller, Brandon's first wife. She was going to leave, Brandon said quietly from behind me. Just like you. Mother. Handled it. Ice crawled up my spine as I turned to face him. The garage light caught something metallic in his hand, Martha's antique letter opener. I'm sorry, he whispered, and I finally understood who my anonymous texter was trying to protect me from. Mother says this is the only way. I reached for my phone, but Brandon was faster. The letter opener glinted as he stepped forward, his mother's puppet to the end. The garage door slammed open, flooding the space with light. Jessica stood there, gun trained on Brandon. Drop it, she ordered, voice steady. Now. The letter opener clattered to the concrete. Brandon's face crumpled like wet paper. Jess, Mother will. Mother will what? Kill me too. She kept the gun level as she moved toward me. Like Catherine, I clutched the box of documents, pieces clicking together. You've been sending the texts. Someone had to stop this. Jessica's eyes never left Brandon. I couldn't save Catherine, but I watched Mother twist you into her puppet, Brandon. Watched her do to Evie what she did to all of us. Heels clicked on the driveway outside. Martha's voice carried through the evening air. Brandon? Darling, is it done? Jessica's hand trembled slightly. 7 years I've kept quiet. Helped hide Mother's arrangements. Watched her destroy everyone who threatened her control. You don't understand, Brandon pleaded. Catherine was going to expose everything. The accounts, the properties, the bodies. I finished, pulling out another death certificate. Like David Miller, your father? Convenient heart attack right after he filed for divorce. Martha appeared in the doorway, her perfectly composed facade cracking at the sight before her. Jessica, put that ridiculous thing down. We're family. Family. Jessica laughed, harsh and broken. Is that what you call this? Drugging women, stealing their money, arranging accidents. Everything I did was for this family. Martha's voice hardened. Brandon, handle your sister. He didn't move. Brandon. Steel entered her tone. Now. No. The words seemed to surprise him as much as us. No more, Mother. Martha's mask shuddered. Ungrateful child. After everything I've sacrificed. Sacrificed. I stepped forward, Catherine's final letter in my hand. You mean murdered? Catherine knew everything. She wrote it all down before you handled her. You stupid girl. Martha's smile turned vicious. You think you're the first to try exposing us? I've buried better than you. Not this time. Jessica pulled out her phone, switched to speaker. A man's voice filled the garage. Miss Miller, we have your evidence. Teams are moving now. Martha's face went ash-white as sirens wailed in the distance. Jessica, what have you done? What I should have done years ago. Jessica's hand steadied. Catherine was my friend. And I'm done watching you destroy lives. Brandon sank to his knees as red and blue lights flooded the driveway. Martha lunged for the box, but I was faster, backing away as footsteps thundered toward us. It's over, Mother, Jessica said softly. We're finally free. The FBI agents swarmed in, but I couldn't look away from Martha's face, watching decades of careful control crumble into dust. The interrogation room felt like a tomb. 3 hours of questions, and the FBI agents still couldn't understand why I wasn't celebrating. They had Martha in custody, Brandon was cooperating, and Jessica's evidence was damning. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Mrs. Miller. Thompson, I corrected automatically. I'm going back to Thompson. Agent Davis nodded, shuffling papers. Miss Thompson, we found something else in the garage. A will, dated last week, naming you as sole beneficiary of all Miller family assets. My stomach lurched. What? Martha's final trap, Jessica said from the doorway. They'd finished her interview. She knew we were closing in. By making you the beneficiary, she's trying to implicate you in everything. The agent slid photos across the table, account statements, property deeds, all recently modified to include my name. The timing makes you look complicit. That's insane. I didn't. We know, Jessica interrupted. But Mother's lawyers are already spinning it. They're claiming you orchestrated everything, used me to frame her, manipulated Brandon. I laughed, sharp and bitter. And people believe that? People believe money, Agent Davis said quietly. And right now, you look like someone who just inherited millions in stolen assets. My phone buzzed, Clara, probably wondering why I'd missed our meeting. But when I checked, it was a new message from an unknown number. Check the safe deposit box. Keys in Catherine's letter. I pulled out the crumpled letter, and there it was, a small key taped to the bottom corner. There's more, Jessica said, her voice breaking. Brandon. He's recanting his statement. Mother got to him somehow. He's claiming you forced him to turn against her. The room spun. Everything I'd fought for, every truth I'd uncovered, was being twisted into my noose. Martha was going to win, even from behind bars. We can protect you, Agent Davis offered. Witness protection, new identity. No. I stood, gripping Catherine's letter. I'm not running. I'm not letting her write this story. Evie, she's already taken everything else. I cut Jessica off. My marriage, my business, my reputation. But she doesn't get to take my truth. I headed for the door, Catherine's key burning in my palm. Where are you going? Agent Davis called after me. To find whatever's in that safe deposit box, I said, not turning around. And then I'm going to visit your star witness. Brandon won't see you, Jessica warned. He won't have a choice. I pushed through the door, my hollow feeling replaced by something darker. It's time his mother learned what it really means to lose control. Behind me, I heard Jessica whisper to the agent, now she sounds just like Martha. She was wrong. I wasn't like Martha. I was going to be much worse. The safe deposit box held one item, a USB drive with surveillance footage from Martha's study. Catherine's final insurance policy, documenting every conversation, every scheme, every murder plot, including her own. I watched Brandon's face as the footage played in the prison visiting room. His mother's voice filled the space between us. She's becoming a problem, darling. Like Catherine. We know what needs to be done. Turn it off, he whispered. No. I leaned forward. Watch yourself agree to kill your wife. Both times. His hands trembled on the table. You don't understand. Mother. Stop saying that word like it absolves you. I pulled out Catherine's letter. Your first wife understood perfectly. That's why she planted cameras before confronting Martha. She knew neither of you could be trusted. I loved Catherine, he protested weakly. You loved Mother's approval more. Jessica's voice cut through the room as she entered, flanked by Agent Davis. Just like you loved her money more than Evie. Brandon's face crumpled. Jess, what are you doing here? Finishing what Catherine started. She placed a folder on the table. Mother's been busy in custody. 3 calls to offshore accounts, 2 visits from her lawyers, and 1 very interesting conversation about accident insurance. I smiled coldly. She's still trying to kill me, isn't she? She'll never stop, Brandon admitted, something breaking in his voice. She'll destroy everything to maintain control. She always has. Then it's time to destroy her first. I slid Catherine's letter across the table. Your wife wrote this the night she died. Read it. His hands shook as he unfolded the paper. With each word, the color drained from his face. She knew, he whispered. About Father's murder. About the embezzlement. Everything. And now everyone else will too. I stood, gathering the evidence. Unless what? Unless you do one honest thing in your life. I met his eyes. Testify against her. Tell the truth about Catherine. About father. About all of it. She'll never forgive me. Good. Jessica's voice was steel. Maybe you'll finally learn to forgive yourself. Brandon stared at Catherine's letter for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for Agent Davis's recorder. My name is Brandon Miller, he began, voice steadying. And I need to confess to conspiracy to commit murder. I walked out as he spoke, leaving Jessica to handle the details. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a message from Martha's prison. You'll regret this. I typed back 4 words. Catherine sends her regards. Then I blocked the number, stepping into the sunlight. Some revenge is best served in silence. The verdict came down like thunder, guilty on all counts. Martha's face remained stone cold as they led her away, but her eyes found mine in the courtroom. I recognized that look now, not hatred, but fear of losing control. Brandon got a lighter sentence for his testimony. As they took him out, he tried to catch my gaze, but I was already gathering my things. Some apologies come too late. Ready? Jessica asked, waiting by the door. Almost. I pulled out Catherine's letter, the last page I hadn't shown anyone. This belongs to you. Her hands trembled as she read. She wanted me to have the beach house? The only Miller property bought with clean money. She knew you were trapped too. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, hungry for statements about the notorious Miller family murders. I pushed through them toward Clara's waiting car, but Jessica caught my arm. What will you do now? She asked. I thought about the studio Martha had stolen, the life she'd tried to destroy. I'm rebuilding. My way this time. Alone. Sometimes alone is better than surrounded by lies. I squeezed her hand. But my door's open if you need it. Clara honked, impatient to get to the bank. We had accounts to unfreeze, assets to reclaim. But first, I had one stop to make. Catherine's grave was simple, unmarked at Martha's insistence. I placed fresh flowers and the evidence that had finally brought her justice. Copies, of course. The originals were safely stored where no one could bury the truth again. My phone buzzed, another text from an unknown number. But this time, I didn't feel dread. Let them come. I knew how to fight back now. Evie, Clara called from the car. There's something you should see. She handed me a letter that had arrived that morning. Brandon's handwriting, but not the desperate plea I'd expected. Instead, coordinates to an account I'd missed and 3 words. Make it right. I smiled, thinking of Martha's face when she realized her perfect plan had crumbled. Some people collect art or cars. I collected evidence, waiting for the right moment to strike, just like Catherine had taught me. The wind picked up as I walked back to the car, carrying away the last whispers of the Miller family legacy. I didn't look back at the grave. Catherine knew, sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming strong enough to walk away from them. Clara started the engine. Where to? Forward, I said, tucking Brandon's letter away. Some chapters need to stay closed. But I kept Catherine's key, just in case.